cousin shot.
I know, just relax. Don't lose it. Don't lose it.
You sit there. Okay.
Saw you inspirations maybe a couple weeks ago. Oh. It's so wonderful to see you then. Thank you for coming.
But this is Sandy's better half.
Saw you briefly.
How are you?
Saw you briefly.
It's okay. Thank you. How are you feeling?
I know, I remember. Our shows.
Okay.
Oh, really?
I went to synagogue with Mark Rowe for about 100 years. Well, maybe 90. Actually, I think I knew of your husband as well. I told him how I'm a little out of balance, but
I showed the boys. So impressed. I've never been able to do that. All my lessons, I've never been able to play
Should I? Should I? So, it's okay.
I have 416. And then I'm leaving tomorrow at 7.
I said, I told her, it's the hair. Yeah, always the hair. Well, you always
There was a long line there. Wouldn't let me if I told. there's other live streams. Yeah, that's it made me a little happy because you always hike faster than me. Apparently my daughter left with my and all comes You're in good shape. My mother new hip and this, but wants everything, grandkids. So she good. Yeah. I miss now they talk about swear. Now they know everything. Cute. Smaller than you. Still doing what's it called? Spiteball. College took it out of you? You were like, made money at it?
Well, oh no. That's your
There he is. Right behind it all.
Hey, at least you got the brakes to put it so excited. I telling you. Next to my two lovelies.
Are you hurt?
Dan? 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 Ladies and gentlemen, if I could please ask you to find your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we are going to begin our services for Mr. Mitchell Weiss. If I could please ask you to silence your cell phones and any other noise-making devices. Officiating our service today will be Rabbi Lily Goldstein and Cantor Kevin McKenzie of Congregation BJBE.
word back to me, and then Baruch, Dayan, and Moshe. That's the suggestion.
Many decades ago, Mitch and Sharon joined Congregation BJBE. And our spiritual leader, Rabbi Mark Shapiro of blessed memory, began every funeral with a poem that I was planning on reading today. And it's actually the exact same poem that's already in this pamphlet, which I think is a beautiful, beshert, meant to be moment. So I'll invite you to join me in it, or you can just listen as we reflect on these words together. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing, from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death, to life everlasting. Today we are here to remember Mitchell Weiss. We acknowledge the immediate mourners, his wife of 62 years, Sharon, his brother Herb, his children, Terry and Rob, his daughter-in-law, Valerie, his grandchildren, Toby and Gemma, Maya and Adam, so many beloved friends and community members whose lives he touched with his kindness and his loyalty. We begin our services with words of psalms that connect Mitch's memory to the long history and traditions of our people.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenach aleini nafshi yishovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo gam ki eilech begeitz al bavet lo ira rak yata imadi shivtecha umishantecha heima yenachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai Di shanta Hashem in roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, kol yemei chayai. Shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar. Adonai roi lo echsar.
Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Psalm 121. Esaenai el harim me'ain yavo Ezri me'im Adonai me'ain yavo Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Esaenai el harim me'ain yavo Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz.
We now get to hear from some of the people who knew and loved Mitch best. I want to invite up the grandchildren, Toby, Gemma, Maya, and Adam, to share a few words.
Thank you all for being here today. Feel very fortunate to have had Papa in all of our lives. He was a hardworking, caring, honest man. Always put family first. Didn't show that just in his words, but in the way that he lived. He always showed up for us, without a doubt, whether it was a baseball game, swimming match, wrestling match, theater performance, really anything of importance, you could count on making sure that you would see him in the crowd. If it meant traveling all the way to Copenhagen to see myself and fiancée Jessica when we were abroad, or even something as simple as just going to Walker Brothers and enjoying pancakes together. No matter what it was, he made us feel like a priority. and I loved him for that. He was a thoughtful, analytical person, but also had this, warm, playful side to him. One of my earliest memories with Papa was my sister Gemma was being born, and Papa was staying with me. And when it was time to go meet her, I decided that wearing a full Spider-Man costume would be the appropriate introduction. Papa was completely on board, no questions asked. So off to the hospital we went, Spider-Man and Papa. And in his final days, my mom, Grandma, and I were able to spend some time with him. And it was important to hear how, he spoke about each of us and our careers, graduation of college, just knowing that we were all in a good place. So, lessons he taught me about family, hard work, enjoying life, stay with me forever. I love you, Pop. I'll miss you.
Hi everyone, my name is Gemma. I'm Toby's sister. Thank you so much for being here today. Whenever I went over to Grammy and Papa's house as a kid, Papa would ask me a question. What are the flowers in the front yard called? The flowers were pink and purple, and they circled the perimeter of a tree in the yard, and they grew there every year. They were called begonias. Because roses and tulips and violets would have been too easy for a 7-year-old to remember. When I started to ace this quiz and remember what they were called, he started to ask me to spell the word. I'm not sure if this was specific to me or if this was something he did with my brother and cousins too, but it became a fun tradition. And now if anyone asks me to point at a begonia, I've really got it down. This is more than just a fun game though. It was a really great representation of who Papa was. Not just because of his interest in nature, but because of his patience. His kindness, his encouragement, and his passion for learning. Throughout my life, I've witnessed these traits in every moment I had with Papa. Always encouraging me, always supporting me, always motivating me to be the best I could be. No matter what I set out to do in my childhood and in my adulthood thus far, Papa was always there to cheer me on. He valued education deeply and made that clear in supporting my academic journey in every way possible. He wanted to give me and my brother and cousins every possible opportunity, and he reminded us to always work hard. A value he not only preached, but demonstrated every day of his life. The last time I saw Papa, he told me it was a life goal for his grandkids to be better than he was, as in have more opportunity, achieve more, be smarter, and work harder. I'm not sure how it would be possible to surpass Papa in those ranks, but I know that every day I will try. He encouraged me to pursue whatever I was passionate about. This past fall, I began the process of applying to grad school, and he offered his full-hearted support to me about it from the start, asking questions, asking for updates on where I was applying, and where I'd heard back. It wasn't until a couple of months ago, though, that he said, "Wait, so tell me what this degree actually is." I then realized that he hadn't even fully understood what I wanted to do, but nonetheless, he'd always supported it and trusted me in it from the get-go. This also wasn't just limited to academics and work. He gave the same sense of support to every hobby, interest, and passion that I had. I started doing art as a kid, and it's still part of my life today. He took a great interest in it, always motivated me to continue with it, and has definitely praised some paintings that never should have seen the light of day. I enjoy talking about art with him and making drawings for both him and Papa. Him and Grammy. Words weren't necessarily Papa's way of expressing love, and art felt like a vessel for us to connect through. Through and through, Papa was a rock for our family, stepping in to help however he could, despite where or when. He had a can-do attitude, and acts of service were definitely his way of showing he cared. He was selfless, never wanting to be the center of attention or brag, despite his accomplishments and incredible experiences. At family gatherings, I'd noticed how he would more often opt to be the one taking the photos of us, rather than being in the pictures himself. Grammy and him have always put family first and dedicated themselves to supporting us. Being a grandkid in this family is a pretty coveted position. Our grandkids have a gift for making us feel way cooler than we are. And they've made us feel important every day of our lives. I can't recall a single birthday, play, or school event that they weren't at. Papa was a true, constant source of support for us, and I think he really had a soft spot for us too. I learned this when I was a kid. There was a day he was babysitting me, and I somehow convinced him to let me ride my scooter inside of my house. I remember being really proud of myself for pulling that off, and pretty bummed that the scooters didn't work on carpet. In December, I flew to Florida to spend time with Papa while he was in the hospital. Although it was for a terrible circumstance, I'll always be grateful that I was able to be there, and we got a lot closer because of the one-on-one time we shared. Despite being stuck in a dark ICU room for days and facing some really difficult obstacles, Papa remained kind, patient, and gracious to everyone there. He even apologized to the doctors and nurses for quote-unquote taking up their resources, to which the doctors and nurses kindly replied, "Sir, this is our job." Papa's always tended to be quieter and more of a listener than a talker, so when we talked for what seemed like hours, I realized, wow, he must really be bored here. We talked about life, his experiences, and my goals, and I'll always cherish the time we had together. After I left Florida, we stayed in closer touch than before and texted each other a lot. He'd send me pictures of his hospital food, and I'd send him photos of my friends' pets because he loves animals. After that trip, the next time I saw him in person was last weekend. I somewhat randomly decided to come back to Illinois, and I'm so glad that I did. I spent a couple of days with him in the hospital, the second of which it was just us two. At this point, he was really not doing well, and he was very tired. And as I live in Minnesota, I was nervous that this would be the last time I'd see him, that I wouldn't be able to get back to Illinois fast enough if things declined more. Despite how he was feeling, he still managed to not only talk to me about how I was, and if I had any updates on choosing a grad school. He talked to me about how he felt his purpose in life had been fulfilled because all of his grandkids were both college educated and good looking. His words and not mine. He told me how seeing each person in his family doing well gave him peace and feeling ready to go when the time came. After an hour or two, he told me that I could leave and that it had been a good visit. At face value, it might have seemed like he was dismissing me and wanted me to leave. But knowing Papa and how often selfless he is, I also knew he may have just felt bad for keeping me there. So I told him I wanted to stay, but that if he wanted to have alone time, he could totally kick me out. He laughed a little and told me, "Are you kidding? I would keep you here forever if I could." Unfortunately, my fear was right. Sorry. And that was the last time I saw Papa. I find solace in the fact that the last thing I said to him was, "I love you." He often infamously responded to people saying "I love you" with "same here" or ditto. But this time, and as the last thing he unknowingly said to me, he told me "I love you too." That day I brought Papa the last piece of art I'd ever make for him, a drawing of begonias. It breaks my heart that Papa won't be here for whatever comes next, but I remind myself of how lucky I am that until now, in 24 years of life, I've never yet known a world where Papa wasn't there for me. I hope he can somehow hear me say all of this, but knowing Papa and how he expressed love more through actions than words, I also want to do more than just say it. I hope he can not only hear me, but see me as I strive to work hard towards my goals, even when motivation is low. Never think twice before offering a hand to someone who needs help, and having a bag packed anytime I have an opportunity to travel somewhere new. I hope he'll be able to somehow see it all. Most importantly, though, I hope he can hear me as I say this. Yes, I remember that the flowers are called begonias. spelled B-E-G. O-N-I-S. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Adam. I'm the youngest grandchild. And being the youngest means a lot of times I get reminded of things that I'm too young to remember by the other three and the entire family. There's one story that gets brought up a lot more than the others, and it goes something like this. So when I was 8 months old, we were all on a family vacation down in St. John in the Virgin Islands. And I just made the leap from regular baby food to the chunkier stuff, kind of already pushing boundaries for an 8-month-old. And apparently it didn't go so well. I started choking immediately. And my parents were, I think, out on a date night or something, and they weren't around. But Papa was there to save the day, and he did not hesitate. He performed what the family describes as some variation of the Heimlich, which is maybe unorthodox for a baby, but it worked, and I'm very glad it did. So depending on how you look at it, there's a real argument that I only get to stand up here today because of Papa. And I think that's kind of just who he was. He always showed up for us, the big stuff, the small stuff. Whether it was something serious, something small, he was always there for it. Like Toby said, baseball games, milestone events, even sewing up a small hole in my favorite stuffed bunny rabbit when I was younger. And some of my favorite memories with him were the simplest ones. Growing up, one of my favorite things was getting to sleep over at Grammy and Papa's. And every time we showed up, one of the first questions was always, "Where do you want to go to eat?" And without fail, the answer was Sweet Tomato every single time. And for those that don't know, Sweet Tomato was this big buffet-style restaurant. Nothing special at all, just this massive buffet. And looking back now, I'm pretty sure Grammy and Papa were just being good grandparents about the whole thing because they never really loaded up their plates the way that all of us did. But Papa and I had our thing there. They had this chili, completely ordinary buffet chili. And it was served in a ladle by a stranger, and somewhere along the way we started calling it Papa's chili. And that was it. That was all it took. 8-year-old me was convinced without a doubt that this was the best chili on the entire planet, this buffet chili. And Papa never once suggested otherwise. He just went with it. He had this way of making small, ordinary things feel like they were specifically yours. And I'm grateful I got to experience that with him. And of course, Papa, big foodie. He was a Chicago man through and through, as I'm sure others will mention. He loved his pizza, he loved his hot dogs, and above all, he loved his sports. And there was maybe a 90% chance that any visit with Papa coincided with baseball or football season. And almost every time I'd walk in, the first thing out of his mouth to me was, "How about our boys?" And of course, he was talking about the Bears and the Cubs. And win or lose, and let's be honest, it was for the last 20 years, it's often been lose, but hopefully it's changing soon. And he never really wavered. He was loyal to his teams the way he was loyal to everything else that mattered to him. And I loved just talking sports with him, and that's a memory that I'll always cherish. So I feel really lucky we got to share that. And I'm going to keep watching our boys, Papa, and I'll be sure to always let you know how they're doing, and I'll think of you when I do. So.
All right. Hi. Thank you again for all being here today. I'm Maya. There are so many wonderful memories to choose from with Papa over the years, but some of my favorite memories with Papa have been from our time together at the Chicago Botanic Garden. The garden has always been a special place, and no matter how many times we went, it always felt like there was something new to see or discover. We'd explore the garden, sometimes by foot, sometimes by tram. Sometimes we would talk about life, or Papa would ask about school or the activities I was currently up to, always interested in what I had to share. We'd walk through the different gardens, such as Evening Island, a place Papa liked to have lunch because of the great views, and the English walled garden, which I always loved, as it felt like something out of a fairy tale. When the garden was in bloom, we'd admire the beautiful and brightly colored flowers, and would point out our favorites as we went. Sometimes we would note the unique plants we saw as well. I remember one time wondering out loud what a plant was, since it didn't have a label, but it seemed really familiar. Papa excitedly pulled out his phone to show me an app he had to identify plants. After a picture and a little Googling, we concluded it was a type of curly kale. Papa had a curiosity for the world around him, and he was always looking to learn. Sometimes we would just wander in a comfortable quiet with the sounds of nature around us. No matter where I wanted to go in the garden, Papa was always happy to go with, walking by my side. Papa always supported his grandkids and was so proud to see where each of us has ended up. In one of my last visits with him, he asked lots of questions about my upcoming job. He wanted to hear stories from my recent travels, and I got to show him some of my photos from this year's orchid show at the garden. As we went through the photos, we both pointed out our favorites, just like we would do during our time there together. To end, I wanted to share a poem that was part of an installation at the gardens a couple of summers ago. It talks about living intentionally, being present, and making the most of our one wild and precious life, which Papa certainly did. The poem is titled The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, who's eating sugar out of my hand, who's moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who's gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
As we were sharing stories about Mitch yesterday, Rob joked a bit that it seemed like Mitch's grandkids grew up in a slightly different version of Mitch. And it's beautiful to hear the ways that he, as a father, allowed himself to embrace and grow into who he became as a grandfather. And so I want to invite first Terry and then Rob to share some of those stories.
All right. Whew. So a couple of months ago, I heard a saying that really resonated with me, and I've been thinking about it ever since. Love is a verb. What does that mean? To me, it means actions speak louder than words. It's wonderful to tell people how we feel, but it's more powerful to show them through what we do. And as I thought about my memories of my dad and what I wanted to share today, I realized he truly epitomized this statement. He wasn't someone who verbalized his emotions or used a lot of words, but from the time when I was very small, he showed me how much he loved me in countless ways. To my dad, love really was a verb. So I'd like to share a few examples of this from different times in my life. So when I was about 4 years old, I performed my first, possibly my last, ballet recital. I wore a bumblebee costume and I buzzed around the stage. We exited in complete chaos after the performance. Kids were running everywhere. Parents were searching for their little bees. I was painfully shy and absolutely panicked. Before I knew it, my dad swooped me up and put me on his shoulders. I remembered instantly feeling so safe and completely loved. I also remember sitting next to my dad at temple services. He would hold my hand, and I could still picture his hands, so big, warm, and comforting. I can't say I was always thrilled about sitting through services, but it was just such a powerful memory. It was a simple act, but it said everything. So fast forward to college at the University of Illinois. I was very sick with Crohn's disease, and my mom sent my dad to Champaign to bring me home. Now, I wasn't always the easiest teenager or young adult, and I think my mom may have told him, "Hey, Mitch, it's your turn. You gotta go get her." So he showed up at my sorority house to find a very sick me and a room that was so messy you could barely see the floor. Without a word or complaint, he calmly cleaned up my disaster of a room. He packed me up and got me to the hospital in Kansas City. I don't remember being flustered for him being flustered for even a second. And immediately after my surgery, he brought me the biggest, greasiest hamburger that I requested, even though I'm quite sure I was not supposed to be eating that yet. So the list goes on and on and on. He won the 6th grade math fair for me, probability with dice, and he would tutor me. He would attempt to tutor me in high school in math, and when I wasn't having it all, he remained so patient. He would come over to my house to fix things when the kids were growing up. He was always willing to sew buttons or mend holes in clothing. When my life headed south, which it did a couple of times, he was there to pick up the pieces in whatever way he could. He didn't offer long emotional talks, but he showed up every single time. I've tried to live my life in a love as a verb kind of way, but recognizing this so clearly in my dad inspires me to do it even more. All right, so I can't talk about my dad without mentioning his quirky, offbeat, sometimes surprising sense of humor. so he wasn't a loud, life of the party funny, but he would throw out some comments that would completely catch you off guard, as I'm sure many of you know. We also had some very silly moments when Rob and I were growing up. For example, on a road trip through Colorado, on a narrow, winding road with really steep drop-offs, he briefly took his hands off the wheel and said, "Look, no hands." That moment is permanently etched in my memory, probably Rob's too. On that same trip, he made up a song with unforgettable lyrics. I left my locks at a box factory. And as ridiculous as that sounds, because it was, I still hear that song in my head. So he also had a quiet appreciation for bathroom humor, and I fully attribute my love of fart jokes to my dad. And I'm fairly certain that Rob inherited this as well. Another thing that defined my dad was his deep love for animals. From the time I was very young, I saw that tenderness in him, and it absolutely has been passed down to me and to his grandchildren. So one of my earliest memories was of baby rabbits abandoned in our backyard. My dad carefully tried to feed them with a dropper, doing everything he could to save them. Over the years, there was a parade of animals through our house. We had parakeets, gerbils, hamsters, a guinea pig, thankfully not all at once, but it was pretty crazy. Our temple even had a mock kibbutz, and after much begging and crying on my part, my dad let me bring chickens home to our house. That did not last long. And at a farmer's market in Fort Worth, Texas, I convinced him to let me bring home a baby duck, and he even built an outside pen for my beloved Fuzzy. So for those of you who knew my dad well, you know he liked things clean, very, very clean, which meant he sometimes gave baths to pets that probably shouldn't have been bathed, rodents and birds included. So probably wasn't the best idea, but his heart was always in the right place. So about 2.5 years ago, I bought a house, and that meant so much to my dad. It was important to him that I felt settled and happy. My house backs up to a forest preserve and is surrounded by trees and wildlife. So last spring, some robins built a nest right outside my living room window. I had a front row seat to the eggs hatching, the mom feeding her babies, and eventually the little birds flying off on their own. It was literally like a National Geographic special. I sent my dad videos every day and photos of the birds, and he loved them. There also was this beautiful little yellow bird that would come swooping around my kitchen window, and it just constantly came around. And there's just something about this bird that felt very spiritual and unique. And my dad always used to ask me about Yellowbird. It was like he understood something unspoken. And early last summer, birds built a nest on my parents' grill on their balcony, and my dad gave me updates about the eggs and the parent birds. So we had a lot of bird connection last year. So last week, on Thursday, the day before my dad died, I had what I knew might be our last conversation. We understood things weren't looking good. I told him, even though his body might be leaving, I believe his energy and spirit would still be around. I was relieved that he didn't act like I was crazy, and he seemed comforted by that thought. I asked him if he wanted to choose an animal that would let me know he was still around. Of course, he chose birds. He even asked if I should pick a specific bird like a robin, and I told him no, any bird would be fine. I'm sure when it happens, I'll just know. That was the last time I spoke with him. I'm looking forward to the bird activity around my house this spring and summer. I'm 100% certain my dad is going to be around. Dad, I'm going to miss having you here physically, but I still feel your presence, and I know you're not leaving completely. Thank you for always showing up, and thank you for showing me that love is something you do.
All right. Thank you all for being here today. It means so much to our family, and we just really appreciate the love and support and kindness we've been getting from it. Make this a little bit higher, maybe. That you've shown us throughout. There's probably a 0% chance I get through this in one piece, but let's see what we can do. Dad was curious, grounded, analytical, and possessed a quietly surprising sense of humor. He was simply a really great guy, someone everybody seemed to like. And if you knew him, you knew that it wasn't because he demanded attention, it was because he genuinely gave it. He paid attention, he listened, he noticed things. He was actually interested. He was also interested in his sports teams, as Adam mentioned. He always looked forward to settling in for a Bears game, some Illini football or basketball, or back in the good old days, a leisurely afternoon ironing his shirts with the Cubs on WGN. I'm not sure anyone but my dad could find his happy place while ironing his clothes. For years, he had wanted to see the Illini play in a bowl game, and last December he finally did, traveling to watch them win the Citrus Bowl, their first bowl victory in over a decade. He was absolutely thrilled to have been there. It wasn't just about football. It was about completing something he had quietly hoped to do for such a long time. This past December, just after being admitted to the hospital, he had to endure watching the Bears lose to the Packers, not ideal timing, but those next two magical wins against Green Bay energized him in a way and were such a welcome distraction from everything else going on. Even then, he could still lean into what mattered to him. Even then, he could still be himself. His Chicago roots ran deep in another area, too, good food. But like everything else about him, his tastes were down to earth. Corned beef for pastrami and rye, a Walker Brothers apple pancake, and Lou Malnati's deep dish pizza made up his culinary trifecta. I can't remember a birthday or Father's Day in Chicago when one of those three staples wasn't on the menu. These items weren't just food with Dad. It was seemingly almost a ritual, a tradition, and will be a tradition and memory that I know will live on. Fittingly, here we go. Fittingly, the day before he passed, even though his appetite had waned, he managed a few very small bites of his favorite Lou's deep dish. As soon as he tasted it, his eyes brightened and he gave an unmistakable nod of approval. In that moment, everything about him was still right there. My dad also loved to travel. Growing up, our always memorable family car trips were our main way of vacationing. But when I was in middle school, he decided he wanted to see Europe. And he proposed one of those bus tours that covers about 8 countries in 10 days. Unsurprisingly, that did not appeal to everyone in the family, but to me, it sounded perfect. So the father and son European vacation was on. That trip sparked my love of travel, but more importantly, it let me see my dad as other people saw him. On that trip, and later on another one to Ireland, I watched how he naturally drew people in, not by dominating conversations or commanding attention, but by listening, by asking thoughtful questions, by truly caring about the answers. When asked something, he would pause and consider it carefully. Silence never made him uncomfortable. He never rushed to fill it. He never felt obligated to offer an opinion unless he really had something meaningful to add. Watching him, I came to appreciate his instinct to care more about being interested than in being interesting, although, more often than not, he managed to be both. Over the years, he and my mom took so many more wonderful trips and cruises together. They truly cherished these adventures. But he didn't need these great adventures to be happy. In Chicago, as Maya has mentioned, The Botanic Garden was a beloved oasis. In Florida, he loved walking and biking along the trails and boardwalks through the wetlands. He could spend hours observing birds, plants, the water, quietly taking it all in. Curiosity never left him. Not too many years ago, he told me he needed a favor. There's an alligator kayak trail he'd always been curious about, but he didn't think any of his friends would want to do. Would I go with him? As we pushed off in our two-person kayak, 3 things became quickly clear. First, this was not going to be a short excursion. Second, my nearly 80-year-old father had absolutely no idea how to kayak. And third, there were in fact a lot of alligators, and they would be right next to us. As he wobbled in the front seat, I asked if he was sure about this. He waved me off. It'll be fine. You'll show me what to do. Then he added, and anyway, I'll be okay. They'll realize I'm old and tough and wouldn't taste very good. You're the one with the problem. That was Dad, analytical and still eager to explore. It turned out to be a perfect day, just the two of us paddling for hours, counting alligators, and catching up on life. Clearly, he was more than just my AARP kayaking buddy. He was a close friend and a trusted sounding board. Someone whose perspective I saw it in big moments and small ones. Someone whose calm steadiness I leaned on more than I probably ever admitted. He deeply influenced who I am in ways I'm still just beginning to understand. I was fortunate to spend most of the last 3 months with him as his health issues rapidly unfolded. And during that time, when his body was at its weakest, I saw him at his strongest in nearly every other way. Facing complication after complication, setback after setback, he showed nothing but character, patience, grace, and resolve. When he had every right to be frustrated, he chose kindness. He kept his sense of humor. He continued to take an interest in others when it could have been so easy to turn inward. Even in his final week, when the demands on his body and mind were overwhelming, he somehow maintained clarity of thought, sound judgment, and the determination to communicate with us, even if only slowly, softly, and with great effort. In my eyes, it was nothing short of heroic. In one of our last conversations, and I know he had similar ones with Mom and my sister, and sounds like with the grandkids as well, with much effort, he reflected on his life the way only he could, analytically. He compared it to the objectives he had set for himself, and he said he was happy. He was satisfied with what he achieved and felt fortunate for all he had experienced. He talked about our family, Mom, my sister, each grandchild, his brother, and me, and why he felt so comfortable and pleased with where he saw each of us at the moment. And because of that, he said now was a good time. Everything was in a really good place. There's something incredibly comforting in knowing how at peace he seemed to be with what was approaching. And I will forever be grateful that he not only felt that peace, but he took such care to make sure we understood it so that we could share it with him. Dad was curious, grounded, analytical, quietly funny, and strong in the ways that mattered the most. And while he was never the best at saying, "I love you," it's okay, because I've come to realize that he has instead simply always chosen to show us through his actions what love truly looks like. I miss you, Pops.
As we reflect on the life of Mitch, we find ourselves in a unique moment in the Jewish calendar. Mitch died during the week of Parshat Tetzaveh. It's a portion of Torah that is famously known for one striking anomaly. It's the only portion in the entirety of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy where the name of Moses, our greatest leader, is entirely absent. For Mitch, who actually carried the Hebrew name Moshe, there is profound resonance in this silence. In Tetzaveh, Moses steps back so that his brother Aaron and the community can step forward. It is the ultimate act of humility. The patriarch, the leader, is noticeably absent so that his family and his people can shine. Mitch was a man who never sought the spotlight, yet his influence was the very foundation upon which this amazing family was built. And perhaps even in his absence, we can reflect and offer gratitude for the wonderful husband, father, grandfather, friend, and person that Mitch was. Lillian and Nathan raised Mitch, his brother Herb, and his sister Jeanette in a modest apartment in Logan Square before moving to West Rogers Park. Growing up, Mitch was both an excellent student and a well-rounded athlete. He was captain of his high school basketball team, maintaining his basketball skills for decades at early morning games at the YMCA, and also always beating Rob at free throws forever. He studied civil engineering at U of I and went on to get his MBA from IIT as well. U of I was where he met Sharon. When the 5'8" Sharon was paired with a much shorter dance partner in ballroom dance class, the other gentleman fixed her up with a man who would be a much better fit, not only in height, but in life. Following a first date during which Mitch helped Sharon find her missing contact lens after curfew, the two of them became true partners. Sharon could tell that he was a good, kind person with whom she could build a life and a family. Mitch's hardworking nature was equally present in both his career and his family life. He was so committed to both. His work at Amoco in operations management took Sharon, Terry, and Rob across the country, first to Fort Worth, then to Kansas City, before they could finally move back home to Chicago. He was someone who identified with his work and took his connection to his workplace seriously. He was an excellent provider and felt a responsibility to support his family. He believed that if you had a job, you should take it, and he had an incredibly strong work ethic. So much so that even after he retired in 1999, he still worked on special projects in a consulting capacity, continuing to share that rare analytical mind. As a father, Mitch demonstrated his care and connection to his loved ones, as we've heard, through his actions. Sometimes they spoke more than words even could, and he always supported everyone. His compassion, as Terry shared, extended to animals too. Chickens, baby ducks, parakeets, and guinea pigs, giving Mitzi, the bat mitzvah dog, special baths for her skin condition. This was a man whose kind-hearted nature ran so deep. If Mitch nurtured all sorts of wild animals, just imagine how he was with his grandkids. He so delighted in being Papa to them. As Valerie shared, along with Grammy, Papa enthusiastically showed up for the kids' events and milestones. Sports, plays, dance recitals, b'nai mitzvahs, graduations. He was clearly a proud Papa and loved the family dearly. You all shared so beautifully about the ways that he was curious about your life, the ways he supported your passions, the ways he accompanied you in the things that you loved. And I have to just reiterate what Gemma said. He felt his purpose was fulfilled because all of his grandchildren were college educated and good looking. Just a taste of both his commitment to education and hard work and his sneaky sense of humor. Once he finally actually retired, Mitch flourished. He could finally let go and truly enjoy the fruits of his labor. A curious student of the world, he enjoyed theater and museums, becoming a voracious reader, adding fiction of all genres to his already expansive library of newspapers and business news from his working days. Mitch delighted in adventure, whether he was exploring neighborhoods in Chicago or factories on family vacations or crossing continents. Mitch had such curiosity about the world, enjoying the culture, history, architecture, and beauty of each new place he visited. He and Sharon had amazing travels together: Australia and New Zealand, Vietnam and Japan, Europe and Israel, visiting Toby and Jessica while they were abroad in Copenhagen. As Sharon joked, his bag was packed as soon as they returned from a trip. He was already ready for the next adventure. He bravely traveled solo as well, on trips to Egypt, India, and Turkey when Sharon wasn't particularly interested in the heat, air pollution, or civil unrest. But that was the kind of relationship that they had, always encouraging each other to follow their own pathways and passions. He loved going on architecture tours. In another life, he might have been an architect. The Melmen, I see you all back there, were another highlight of his retirement. He enjoyed your outings, kayaking and hiking, going to concerts and Cubs games. And despite his initial resistance to going to Florida, He and Sharon built a wonderful, warm circle of friends in their Bellagio community down there, some of whom are here or are watching today. He was even the mayor of his rehab facility down there. Even in such challenging times, Mitch was always kind and attentive, asking after the employees' families, sharing stories about his grandkids. His lifelong friend, Marshall, are you here in person? Shared beautifully about their friendship, their memories of travels throughout Florida and Peru, Ecuador, the Galapagos, their time just walking and talking, the ways they showed up for each other, when Marshall's wife died, when Mitch was at the hospital. Everyone who knew Mitch was lucky to receive his attention, his care, and his curiosity. The thing about Parshat Tetzaveh is that even though his name is not spoken, Moses' presence is so deeply felt. This leader is not gone, even as he has made room for his family to flourish. It is this that I so deeply hope and feel already for Mitch, that like Moses, Mitch's absence will not forever be a void, but will be a legacy to uplift, to continue learning from his example, from the life he lived. Our lives will be enriched if we live as Mitch did, if we can be loyal and funny, honest, hardworking, and kind, if we can delight in a hot dog as much as a fancy meal, if we live our lives with devotion for and love for each other, then Mitch's memory, as Judaism teaches, will truly be for a blessing. We give thanks to God for having been on a journey in life together with Mitch, and in the sadness of his death, we find comfort in hoping that his soul will be bound up in life eternal with God. At this time, we offer words of our memorial prayer as we pray that God protect and keep Mitch's soul for eternity. I'll invite you to please rise.
El malei rachamim shochen b'miromim hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina im keroshim utehorim kezohar harakia mazhirim et nishmat Moshe Baruch ben Nisan v'Leah shehalach le'olamo Baal harachamim yastireichu b'seiter kenafav le'olamim vayitzror b'tzror hachayim et nishmato Adonai hu nachalato ve'yanuach B'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen.
You may be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, this does now conclude the portion of our services here in the chapel. Shiva will be sat today at the Princeton Clubhouse at 3080 Lexington Lane in Glenview. Upon return from the cemetery until 7 p.m. this evening, this address and the information of the Shiva coordinator, Randy Berger, are in your pamphlets. In just a few moments, we will proceed to the graveside. I will ask everyone to return to their vehicles, and if you're not already, pull up as best you can alongside the building, facing east, facing the hearse. If there's no room, then just try to line up one behind the other as carefully as possible. We aren't leaving the cemetery, so it's not a strict funeral procession in that sense. At this time, I will also ask the following to come forward and act as pallbearers: Toby Gardner, Gemma Gardner, Maya Weiss, Adam Weiss, Bill Schwartz, and Myron Simoli. I will ask everyone else to please rise as we escort Mitchell from the chapel, and please proceed to your cars quickly. The service is not over. We are simply switching spaces. Pallbearers? Pallbearers, please.